Greetings from Brazil. First of all, I'd like to express my gratitude to be here, to be invited to present our project. It's a pleasure to present it at the annual ILSI meeting. And our project was entitled Evaluation of the Acute and Chronic Food Consumption by the Brazilian Population through the Family Budget Survey to Assess Pesticide Dietary Exposure. The idea to develop this project came from the need to have a more robust data on food consumption when carrying out a dietary risk assessment. When we work with pesticides, usually we have a very complete dossier, toxicological dossier, but when we need to calculate the exposure data, sometimes we have a lack in this data. And then this is the reason why the project was developed. In Brazil, the Family Budget Survey are performed periodically by the Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics, which aims to obtain information on consumption habits of the family surveyed using household collection units. Information on individual consumption of food products was obtained from the survey performed in 2008-2009. This is the only moment that we have in Brazil data of food consumption. The previous surveys only evaluate food acquisition. In this manner, the results of the survey were listed in the final consumption form as we have here the raw commodity, the processed food, or the prepared food. And the intention of the group was to calculate all the ingredients, the amounts of this ingredient here, to have the final product here, as we call, raw commodities in a total. This is the way that we'd like to use in the dietary risk assessment. Here, only to show where we are inserted on ILSI Brazil. We have 3 types of committee there, and here we are part of the TaskForce Agrochemical Risk Assessment of the Risk Assessment Committee. And for this reason, a lot of discussion was done, and then we created a work group there. This is the members of the work group, several are from industry. I'm the scientific coordinator, and we also have the participation of several scientific advisors from academia, from several universities in Brazil, where each one with its expertise help us a lot in different moments of the project. And also we hire statisticians and a program in order to help us to finalize the project with a program where we can find this data. This is the timeline. We started the project in August 2013, and the project was divided into 2 phases. One, it's about chronic consumption, and the second phase was related to acute consumption. And then this one started in August. We had a publication in May 2015, and we presented the project in the UTox Congress of Toxicology. This is the publication I bring to you, to see. It's a ILSI publication in Brazil. And the second phase starts in December. People are very enthusiastic about the project. 1 month after publication, they start the second phase. And then here, we finalized last year, and we presented the Brazilian Congress of Toxicology. The first phase we have as the main objective to calculate the daily average consumption of raw commodities by the Brazilian population in each of 5 main geographic regions, North, South, Midwest, Northeast, and Southeast, with the objective of using this data in chronic exposure evaluation, especially to evaluate chemical substance present in food products. For have all this work, we start with a specific objective, that is to disaggregate the prepared food into their initial ingredients. This is a huge work because we had more than 2,000 recipes to do that. And in some cases, we have different habits of food in Brazil because it's a huge country. And then sometimes we even don't know what kind of food they are talking about in the survey, because it's a different habits that we have there. And then we had a person that worked with this, and I give here an example. A banana cake, 100 grams, then we disaggregate it into its initial ingredients in order to have this amount of ingredients that will be added at the end to the raw commodities. Another specific objective was to estimate the raw commodity from processed food. In this case of processed food, we only linked the processed food to their respective raw or natural commodity. In this case, we have a wet for, we link it to the wet, and then this is the way that we decided to do the research. We also established case-by-case premise. For example, what do we have in some alcoholic beverage, if you have some raw commodities inside that. And then in this case, we use a lot the help of scientific advisors. We extract and adequate the consumption data from the budgets, family budget survey to obtain the average consumption. And finally, the most challenging aspect was to link this data that we did before with the consumption data. And then, in this case, we associate ingredients from recipes with the consumption data to estimate the daily average food consumption in these main regions in Brazil. We use two types of methodology because the survey usually are carried out in 2 days, but for this kind of survey, they mention that the first day of consumption is the best, they had better quality in the collection of the information, and internationally they use more this kind of approach, but we also decided to carry out to use the 2 days of survey to, in case we need to evaluate the inner personal variation report. And then it's a huge discussion also, but we decided to put the 2 methods in order that the risk assessor decide what kind of methodology they will use when carrying out exposure evaluation. Here is as the program look like. It is a Delphi platform using Microsoft Access database. And here I will give some example. In this case, we ask for the food consumption, the raw. And in this case, we put the banana as an example. And when we try to find, we will find different kinds of banana that were seeded in the survey. And if you accept to investigate all of them, then we link here, and then we do the download. We can choose the region, the methodology, and then we can do the download of the program. In this case, we will obtain the amount of food in grams per day, and here we have a lot of possibility to see by region, by types of products, but at the end we can sum everything to have the average consumption of banana from Brazilian population, okay? And here we can have a summarized list or a detailed list with all data that we want. And then we can put it to Excel and then work with those data to do our exposure assessment at the end. And here we also have, if I'd like to look for some consumption about a specific product, processed food, in this case I put the banana cake, And then we also can identify which region eat more banana cake in Brazil and how is the amount that they eat. And also, here is the same. And also, we can enter here in another place, and we can find the recipe for this banana cake. And then in all of them, we have the reference that we use because we have different types of recipes. Yes, we use the most usual in Brazil. And then, but we put here the reference and all the data that we use to calculate this program. This is the first phase related to average consumption in order to have a chronic exposure data. And the second phase was created because in Brazil we are changing our legislation, and in a near future they will ask us to present an acute risk assessment, a dietary risk assessment, seeing acute exposure. In this case, we need to work with this data because it will be a different approach to use the data. And then we calculate the highest individual consumption of raw commodities. It's not more average, it's the highest consumption for the same regions, with the objective of using this data in acute exposure evaluation of chemical substance. Only to show you, in this case, the chronic is something that is usual for us to carry out in Brazil, but acute is not. And in this case, we would like to identify the large portion that the Brazilians eat for each food and in a short period of time, okay? And for do this type of evaluation, the calculation of this exposure need to be considering probability. And then in this case, we use the 97.5 percentile of consumption and the highest residue to obtain this final value that we would like to use. As a specific objective, we calculate the mean body weight of Brazilian population by each region, because it will be used in the calculation in the future. And we also establish the food unit weight that will be used in some case. And according to joint meeting pesticide residues or food agriculture organization. Why we need to do that? Because we have some cases where the equations need to understand the unit weight that we have. For example, case 2A, the unit weight is higher than 25 grams, an example, an apple. And sometimes people eat more than 1 apple per day. They can eat 2, 3, 4, we don't know. And then in this case, it's this unit weight is lower than the large portion. And then the calculation, the equation is this one, we need to use this data. And in case 2B, this unit weight is higher than the large portion. For example, a watermelon, nobody will eat alone one watermelon, the biggest one. In this case, there is a specific equation that will be used for that. For establish this unit weight, we have some criteria to follow. The first one, we consider Brazilian data presenting the WHO publication about unit weight. Second, when we do not find it there, we try to find national reference in books and published articles. And when we didn't find it, we use the international data presented at the WHO to compose this data. And using the same criteria, it was defined the edible portion of the unit weight, because in some cases, it's really important to know the edible portion and not only the unit weight. Yes, for example, an avocado, you have the seed that is big, you do not eat that. And then you need to know, you understand this. And commodities with unit weight lower than 25 grams or not listed in Brazilian minor crop legislation were not considered in our research. Continue the specific objective. We estimate the highest reported intake that we call large portion for each food, natural food, in natura food, total, only, or processed, prepared, as I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation. We also calculate it using the individual body weight is another measure, because probably in the future, this is the best value to be used in the risk assessment. And we create a food consumption database, as the same as we present for chronic one. And in this case, we have some, we need to do some groups in order to facilitate the work. And then, for example, here, raw commodities, we did a group for beans, because we have a lot of types of beans. And then we put a group of beans, including all of these types. And for processed and prepared food, the same. In this case, for example, for our eggplant, we have several preparation modes, and then we try to do a group with similar preparations mode. In this case, we put cooked eggplant in some cases, and aubergine breaded fried for other types. Here is how the program looks like, and we have, it's very similar to the previous one. Here is to calculate the body weight that we have here by region. Here is the individual food unit weight that you have for avocado here. We have the unit weight, we have the edible portion, and we have the reference that we use to establish this value. And here is the way how to calculate it. It's very similar. We put the food that we want, and then we have the several types of bananas, and then at the end, we'll have here in grams per day this percentile, and here grams per day per kilogram of body weight. Okay, and to finalize, the limitation of the program is that we do not have data for children under 10 years old, but it's a limitation of the survey in Brazil. We are waiting that the next survey, they will include children also. And for update the program with new consumption data, it can be done whenever new surveys are performed. It's the Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics, they are planning to carry out a survey in the next year, we hope. And how does it serve society? Estimate Brazilian food consumption is of great importance in acute and chronic dietary exposure assessment of food products containing pesticides, residues. And for the first time, a public tool was created using national and realistic values of large portion of food consumption, as well as a national reference of commodities unit weight, thus contributing to the country's scientific development and enabling the evaluation of acute dietary risk assessment. As I mentioned, it's something really new for Brazilians, for our legislation. And the data generated will be used for the goal of assessing safety of pesticide-treated food in Brazil. Next step, we are planning to have this year some workshops to train the program users. We had one last year in December, and this year we are planning to do that. And we also have the intention to do an article to publish in a scientific peer-reviewed journal. This is something that we are working hard with data integration with Brazilian government, because Brazil government do not have this so robust data to be used, and then we have several meetings with them in order to integrate the data that they can use our data to assess pesticide dietary risk assessment. And also meeting with Brazilian Institute in order to discuss next surveys and to maintain the same codes to be easy for us to update our program. This is the work group. A special thanks to the whole team, because everybody work a lot. It's a hard work, and everybody have a lot of dedication and unity in order to attend all the deadlines of the project. Thank you.
Yeah, we have some time for one or two questions, maybe, if you want to go to the microphone.
Yeah, thank you very much for your interesting presentation. I was wondering how you treat zero intakes, especially for the estimation of chronic exposure, since it's based on too short term, as I hope I understand correctly, but the chronic estimation was based on two short-term dietary measurements. And I was wondering how you treat zero intakes to identify true non-consumption. For instance, in your example of banana bread, somebody may be a high consumer of banana bread, but by chance he didn't consume banana bread at these 2 days.
Okay.
Did you assign, or did you have any information of usual intake, kind of food propensity questionnaire, or usual intake information? I think it would be important for the next survey, in my opinion.
I don't know if I understand correctly, but let me know if I didn't answer correctly. We took this data from Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics. They use the best technique to do the survey investigating. I think they collect more than 5,000 residents, families, and then each one need to wrote everything that they eat during 2 days, not consecutive, but one day and another. And then they put all the things during the breakfast, during the lunchtime, dinner. They put all the food that they consume. And then for this, they select by regions the number of houses that they need to investigate to have a statistical significant number to be used in the research. We know that it's 2018, 2009. It's a long time. The Brazilian habits related to food changed a lot. And in some cases, we do not identify some important consumptions that we had today based on that time. But at least you have an idea of how the habits of some of the Brazilian population. And in some cases, we try to identify some types of food that are not mentioned in the survey. But because of this, we'd like to talk nowadays with the institute in order to have, for the new survey, ways to measure all types of food or needs that we have for our population.
I think I only know that in one Brazilian country there are also initiatives for new development of food propensity questionnaires, which could better identify or which you could combine with these short-term dietary measurements in order to have a better estimation of. Otherwise, I think there's a risk of underestimation.
Yes, we know that. And then we try to use the data that we have in order to not, because in the past, what do we have? How's the consumption of banana? We take only the banana, we do not preview the other uses. The banana cake or banana, other types of food that contain banana. In this case, we have this data more robust to be used to estimate how we can use it. But we know that we have several things that need to change in the next survey in order to have a more robust data.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. I'm wondering if you have good pesticide residue data in your country?
We have, our government are trying to ask to all companies to reduce some old residue for the companies to carry out new studies of residues in order to have a better data about that. And also we have some programs in some place that are trying to investigate and do this kind of analysis to see the residue of pesticides. I think it's much better than in the past, but we also need to improve with other programs. But I can say that the food consumption is, the data of the food consumption used to be worse than the residues of pesticides, because there we have some programs that are giving us good results or good data about the pesticide residues in food.
Yeah, and that's something that needs to be done, on a regular basis, right?
Yes, yes.
Because it's going to vary depending on rain, wind, etc.
Exactly. Yes, we had a Brazilian government program that each year they had a collection of several types of food. They are increasing the types of food, because at the beginning they have a very strict number of commodities. Now they expand this, and then we have more data, but I think we need to improve. And also we have independent or some universities doing this kind of analysis, then it helps us to have a better view of this pesticide residues there.
Yeah, in the U.S., there is a survey that is done every year.
Okay.
It's called the Total Diet Program.
Ah, yes. Yes.
And they actually take produce and they measure pesticide residue levels, which may be a good comparison for, for your geography.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.